education reform. Not something that's going to happen overnight, but I think it's a very thoughtful, systematic approach. We'd be glad to respond to your question.
There are many Republican legislators who want to ensure that teacher pay is linked to performance. How does this achieve that goal?
We think that this is a very well thought out approach that has been able to get significant support from the business community as well as from educational leaders. You've heard from the educational leaders in this. We just had a education summit was led by the business community, and we believe that this will indeed lead, as it has in other countries and in other states, to significant improvement in student achievement.
On the issue of deciding how student achievement growth should count in evaluating teachers, are you kind of kicking that count down the road a little bit? If you don't have that, doesn't look like it's going to be in your recommended legislation, and instead you're going to study it?
No, we aren't. That's the problem we had last year. The legislature decided to study it. That's why we didn't get the waiver. We need to quit studying it, and we need to move forward with implementing changes in reform. But we also respect that this is a process that's going to take some time. It's not just going to, I guess, happen overnight. But other states have passed some pretty significant things in this area, and many of those states have received the waiver that we have not received. I would give Jason the opportunity to talk on this more detail.
So the governor's education reform proposal regarding evaluation of the use of student achievement data in evaluation contains a 3-year-long process for designing and implementing such a system. So we recognize that this is a contentious and significant change, and we want to be thoughtful and inclusive in the design of that structure, but make no mistake, the governor's proposal is an action proposal that moves us forward. It is not a study.
And Governor, maybe this will become clearer tomorrow, but this 187 million, is that going to be new appropriations, or is it going to be diverted from other things?
Yes, this is new money that will be provided. Remember, this is built up over a 5-year period. The first year is primarily focused on planning and preparation. And so you can look at the chart there and you can see how it's built up, but it is $187 million by the time you get to the 5th year in its full implementation, and that is new money.
And you're hoping for more than from existing appropriations?
No, I guess what we're saying is we want to see this approved before we talk about putting more money into the existing system.
Governor, does that include discussions of allowable growth for this session?
Yes. And I will be addressing that issue as well, because I believe we need to change the growth in state aid from being allowable growth, which has a property tax component, to being 100% state aid, where the state doesn't increase local property taxes as part of the school aid formula.
Governor, last year you gave, or last session you gave the legislature a 150-some page bill. They approved a 26-page education reform package. What makes you think this would be any different, and what do you think is going to be the difference fight?
Well, this is refined and more focused. And we've also had the benefit of these task forces that have worked throughout the interim. And we have now got, I think, a much greater consensus among both education leaders, you heard from them in the film, but also among the business community. And I think there's a greater recognition more and more among the public in our state also that our present education system is not preparing the students for the jobs of the future. In fact, not even necessarily some of the jobs of today, because we hear again and again as we travel the state that there are good jobs available, but we don't have people with the right skill sets to fill those jobs. And that's why Skilled Iowa, and I'll be talking about some of these issues tomorrow as well, but that fits in with this as well. We're upgrading the skills of our existing workforce as well as preparing the students of today for the jobs of tomorrow.
Governor, some of the key Democrats on Education Committee in the Senate, for example, have said they want to discuss allowable growth before they talk about education reform. Are you setting up a showdown with them right away where nothing's going to get done except fight over allowable growth for the first have.
That's what's been done in the past, and we said that is counterproductive to have these showdowns and fights over things like that. Instead, let's pass transformational education reform that's going to really make a difference in improving educational opportunities for our students. We're willing to discuss those other issues, but we believe this needs to be paramount, and this is going to be the issue that we want to see approved before we get into these other things.
Are you gonna propose an allowable growth level in your budget?
No, I indicated my intention is that whatever we end up doing should not be allowable growth, which has a property tax component. Another part of my program is going to be dramatic reduction in our dependency on property taxes and assuring local governments that the state will replace all of the property tax reduction that we mandate through our reforms for all classes of property with state dollars to replace the property tax line.
Governor, does this proposal have the support of the teachers union?
We have a number of teachers, including I think one of the teachers on that film was a past Teacher of the Year, involved in this. We haven't specifically asked for the endorsement of any of the organizations like the ISEA or the School Board Association or school administrators, but they, and including, you saw the president of Branstad University also in there, but we have included leaders from all of those organizations in the task force. They help build the consensus that this recommendation is based on.
What's the measure that you're going to use to, a couple of years down the line, to see if this is successful? If, like, we meet Massachusetts on NAEP scores, or what are you looking at?
Well, I think we need to be looking more than a couple years down the road. We need to probably, this is phased in over a 5-year period, and Massachusetts didn't get to where they are today in a couple of years. They did this over a couple of decades. And I think we have got to, first of all, pass transformational education reform. We've got to stick with it. We've got to make sure that we provide the resources to implement it. We need to be willing to perfect an improvement in the years ahead. But this is, we've been studying and working on this for a long time, and now's the time for action.
But what measure are you going to use?
So we will measure student achievement. That is the real measure. I think the NAEP scores are what is kind of universally accepted throughout the country. In '92, we led the nation on NAEP. Today, we're 25th. And so I think NAEP is really considered probably the standard that's recognized throughout. So rather than trying to come up with our own, we think that that's recognized throughout the country. That'd be the appropriate measure.
Governor Branstad, will this just include public schools, or would it also include accredited accredited non-public schools for the evaluation process?
Yeah, okay.
So, specific to the evaluation process, that only pertains to public schools. There are elements of the governor's proposal that extend to accredited non-publics, but it really depends on each individual policy whether it extends or not. In most cases, there are options for the accredited non-publics to take part in components of it if they choose.
Governor, you said that, we're all aware that this was tried back in the 90s, and then
Well, they
ran out of
passed-
money. Right. Then we ran out of money and didn't fund it. But you're saying that it's going to
Actually, it was passed in 2001.
I'm sorry, 2001, right?
It was passed in 2001, the career ladder, but then it was never funded. And so what we said, there's been a recognition for some time that we needed to make some significant changes, and we need to have better opportunities for teachers to gain recognition and to be able to improve their skills and to be able to better transform the teaching profession. And before the legislature has not provided the resources, this puts together a thoughtful, systematic plan that provides the resources, but it provides the resources after we've done the planning and put in place a process that we think will get us the results we need.
But it is pushed into the future, so are we assuming that this is your announcement that you're going to run for governor again?
No. What this is, remember when I came into the governor's office 2 years ago and we inherited this fiscal mess and we had all this one-time money being used for ongoing expenses and no long-term planning. We said, we're gonna change all of that. We're gonna have a 2-year biennial budget and a 5-year plan. And we have put in place a 5-year plan. And that 5-year plan has the resources to fund this program, as well as the property tax relief that I will talk about tomorrow for all classes of property. If we continue to have the fiscal discipline that we put in place the last 2 years, and I would point out that we have a smaller, more efficient, more transparent government than we had 2 years ago, and we want to keep it and continue to improve on it.
Governor, is this education proposal funded then through the budget surplus?
Yes, it's funded through the general fund of the state of Iowa, and we have projected, and David Roeder will lay this out tomorrow in the briefing he does for the press, as well as for legislators, that we have used reasonable budget projections going forward for the next 5 years, and this provides the resources to meet all of our recommendations. That's the difference between this administration and the way things were done in the past. They would try to throw things together, find a way to slap the budget together, and say that it was balanced and go home for the year. We said we're going to change that. It's a new day, a new approach, and this is long-term planning. This is kind of what they do in the private sector. This is what has worked at Des Moines University and elsewhere. And so we're working very hard to make sure that we have assured people of Iowa the resources will be there to meet this plan.
Last question. Governor, the legislature passed some things last year, especially dealing with extra help for kids who need help reading by 3rd grade. Some of those things didn't get funded last year. Are you including money in your plan this year to get some of those programs started?
Well, I'm not sure. I think we are. You want to address that? I'll let you address that.
The governor's proposal with these components doesn't include funding for the reading program that was passed last year. Although there will be discussion, we've been engaged in discussions with legislators about running another component of legislation that would both look at the existing laws that were passed, the 256D block grants that were passed years ago, the law that was passed last year. There needs to be some combination of those two laws to clean up that legislation and make it more impactful, and to look at the funding stream, both from the old law and the new law that was passed, and how those could be clarified and made more efficient.
And that law that you referred to, just can you clarify what
The
that is?
256D block grant, yeah. It's an old law that basically flows through money to school districts for use for literacy purposes, but it's very broad and vague about how that money is to be used. That was an existing law. Last legislative session, another law was passed, another literacy law was passed that included that 3rd grade retention component. Now we've got both laws in place, and so the statute, frankly, is confusing and probably not very impactful as far as actually improving reading scores. And so we'll be working with the legislature during this session to try and find a clear pathway toward a new literacy policy that fuses those together and uses the resources to have an impact.
Thanks, everyone.